the previous lecture, we were discussing about the branch prediction and static and dynamic methods of the branch prediction. And we discussed about the loop rolling techniques in MITS course. And these were the basic compiler techniques for exploiting the ILP. In today's lecture, consider this as the last lecture of the module number 5. We will be discussing about the scheduling. So there, we have basically there is two types of scheduling. Why scheduling is being done? So scheduling, as we all are familiar that they are the part of dependencies, and there are certain dependencies which cause hazards. So dependencies like data dependencies, control dependencies, and structural dependencies, and they are the reasons for causing hazards in the system which delay the structure of the pipeline. So in order to overcome these delays, we are just using this concept of scheduling, and we will see that how scheduling is done, and what is the basic concept of scheduling that we will see in the upcoming slides, and how this scheduling is used to overcome hazards. So let us start with the basic processor overview. So we will just focus on the techniques in this lecture. Suppose we have, in this case, as we can see that we have an ALU, control unit, multiple function units. Then we have a register set. These are the buses that are connected to each other, such that ALU is connected to the main bus system, which is further connected to the memory. As we can see that in this case, this bus system connects ALU with that of the register file. So let us take an example. As we have discussed, there are three types of data hazards. One was raw, read after write. Then we had write after read, and then write after write. There were three hazards. So we are just talking about read after write hazard only right now in this case. Suppose we have an instruction. This is a load instruction, and this load instruction is taking some data from the register R1 in this memory, adding this to 20, and the data holded by this address is being transferred to the register R2. So it is fetching that data from the memory location to this bus system. So it will fetch that memory data from this register location and will put it to the register set R2. Then again add R3, R2, and R4. So add option of R3, R2, and R4. We have in this case, if we add R2 and R4, and then this summation has to be put to the register R3. So in this case, this register R2, on the value of register R2, this addition or the next instruction is dependent. Until and unless this load instruction doesn't write into the register R2, this addition cannot be performed. So it has a data dependency on this register R2. Now, in order to eliminate this data dependency, so we cannot eliminate actually data dependency, because if we can reduce the certain time for the execution of these two instructions. If I want to execute a load instruction and this add instruction at the same in the same cycle, then we need to wait for the load instruction to upload the value of R2. So as we know that a pipelining process, pipelining has 5 stages of processing. So the 5 stages for processing of pipelining are: first, it fetches the instruction, then it decodes the instruction, then data required is fetched for the instruction, then it executes, and then it stores. So we have fetch. After fetch, we have decode, fetch, then decode. Then we need data fetch. So data fetch, then execute, and then we have stored. So these are the 5 stages of the pipelining. So let us say when load was in this instruction, load was in the fetch unit. So it was being fetched, then it was decoded. So when the load instruction was being decoded, this fetch was loaded with add R3. So the pipelining instruction was fetching addition instruction while the load instruction was being decoded. When the load instruction went to data fetch, then the add instruction was being decoded. So this is the structure of the pipelining that we were following in these two cases. Suppose we are just taking the example of these two instructions in the pipeline. So when addition instruction reaches a data fetch, it starts fetching data. Load instruction starts fetching data, and it starts fetching data from R1 plus 20, and it has to execute. When this executes, it has to load data into R2. Till that time, this addition instruction has reached the data fetch part. So it is trying to fetch the data from for the register sets from the register sets R2 and R4. So it will try. So when it will try to fetch data from register R2 and R4, it will see that it has to wait for the R2 to fetch data, because R2 is already under process. R2 has to be written by this load instruction. So until this load instruction executes executes it, then it will again store that data in the register file. So till that time, this add instruction is waiting in this ALU to execute, waiting for the R2. So load instruction is executed, then it will store that particular data in the register file, and then I again fetch that register data for the add instruction to carry on the process. So I can do one thing, we can save the time of writing and then again fetching from the same data. So again, writing into the register set, then again fetching data from that part will take more time. Instead, we can modify this process to some extent. We can create a copy of R2 at the same time. So it will write this R2 in this file, and it will also transfer some part of the R2 to this ALU at the same time. So it will create a copy, it will write some part in the register file, but it will also transfer some copy to the ALU. And when it transfers the copy to the ALU, we can save the instruction cycle or the part that add instruction will execute, and then it will store that value into the register file, and that register file has to be fetched back to perform this addition of R2. So R2, instead of doing so, we just created a copy of R2 and forwarded it to the addition instruction so that that instruction can be executed in the C. So this process of creating a copy and forwarding it to the control unit or the arithmetic logic unit to perform the operation of the next cycle within next instruction within the same cycle. So it is not actually addressing the dependency, but it is actually reducing the time that dependency uh, takes to execute a particular instruction set. So a pipeline is executed. In this way, this raw instruction can be executed, and hence this raw hazard or data, this raw data hazard can be addressed. And this process is known as operand forwarding. This process is known as operand forwarding. So in order to save the time, what we have done, we have just created a copy. Instead of going and fetching again from the memory to where this value to R2, again going to the R2 and then fetching this value will take more time. Instead, while this R2 was in process and its value was created, this will be forwarded to the ALU unit. So it saves time, and this process is known as operand forward. So this is one of the methods to address the data hazard, that is read after write, raw data hazard. So add instruction waiting inside CPU in data fetch stage. Copy file of data is sent to the adder. saving extra time. This is known as operand forward. So let us have an example. Let us say, suppose this is a code that has to be addressed. Let us see what how scheduling is being done in this case. So observing this code. So if we observe this code, we have add, then we have to get the results of R2 and R3 and add them and store that result into the register set R1. Then store R1 to some this address location. Then R1 has to be added with R5 and R6. So as we can see that R1 in this whole program has certain dependencies on the previous instructions. So there are very much dependencies of R1. And what are the types of those dependencies? As we can see, the dependencies due to register R1 in this case, we have a read after write dependency. So between instruction 1 and instruction 2, we have read after write dependency. So this instruction 2 store instruction cannot execute until and unless this instruction of R1 has been written into by this add instruction. This value of R1 has not been written into this add instruction. We cannot perform this store operation. So it is dependent upon this one. So this has extensive data dependency. And certainly after that point, R1 is again being updated by the addition of these two parts. Now R5 and R6. Now R1 will be updated by some other value, that is R5 and R6. So dependency of R1 read after write is with the instruction 2 also, and as well as the dependency of R1 is with instruction 4 also. In this case, as we can see, this is subtraction. The subtraction cannot be performed until unless the R1 is updated by the instruction 3. So we have a dependency of 1 and 2, then raw dependency between 1 and 4. Then as we can see in this example, between 1 and 5, 3 and 4, and 3 and 5. So these are the dependencies, read after write dependencies on this in this register set for the R1. And what are the write after read dependencies? So write after read dependencies is between 2 and 3. Then we have between 2 and 6. Then between 4 and 6 and 5 and 6. So these are write after read dependencies. And then write after write dependencies. So write after write dependencies 1, 3 and 6. As we observe that add is writing operation, it is writing. 3 is also writing as it is adding and writing into R1 again. 6 is also adding and writing into R1 again. So these three are writing operations. As these three are writing operations, so they will be the part of read write after write hazard. So these dependencies are just showing that how these hazards are possible, are seen in this particular example and in this program. And we will see how dependencies can be eliminated. Not eliminated, we do not use the word eliminated. We can just say how dependencies can be worked out by some strategies in order to make the execution of the instructions faster and simultaneous. So operand forwarding is the only method for read after write instruction, as this is a value dependent. So read after write is a true dependency. It is a true dependency because there is a part of data involved in this case. Whereas, and so in this program, every instruction has to work out of order. So it necessarily need not to follow that add instruction, store instruction will be performed just after add, then add. This is not the sequence to be followed exactly every time. So let us see how this is done. So one of the methods to eliminate these dependencies or to address these dependencies, we can say that one of the methods is static scheduling. So static scheduling, there is one difference between static scheduling and dynamic scheduling. So we will schedule these instructions as Static scheduling is said when this is being performed by the compiler. When this process is being done by the compiler, then this part is known as static scheduling. So register renaming is the method, and how it is done. Let us see how register renaming is performed. So we have a add instruction, this R1, R2, R3. So rename R1 to R12 after instruction 3 till instruction 6. So what we are doing, we are basically renaming this R1 because, and why we are renaming this R1, because when we are executing instruction 1, this instruction 1 is fetched. So this instruction 1 is fetched. It was under execution. It was taking the values from R2 and R3 and was updating to R1. So this second instruction, when it was fetched and decoded and what was going to the execution, but it was dependent on the value of R1. Then again in the instruction 3, this instruction can be performed independent of R1. And how this can be, because it is not dependent on any other value. Now it is not dependent upon the previous value of the R1. So this R5 and R6, when they add together, this value has to be fed to the R1. So this instruction can be executed in the same sequence with this instruction. But this instruction this store has to wait for the value updation of the R1. But this add instruction does not need to wait for the value of the R1, and hence to change the nomenclature, we change the name of this R1 to R1. So rename R1 to R12 after instruction 3 till instruction 6. Now this R1 will be R12. Now this instruction 4 is dependent upon this subtraction to perform on the value of R12. And this store instruction is also dependent upon this add instruction for the value of R12. So now dependencies, as with respect to the previous example, we saw that this for dependency between 2, 6, 4, 6, and 5. Now this dependency has been only var and var are between 1, 6 and 2, 6, which are far away in the program order. Now these dependencies, because of the renaming of this program, has been reduced, has been addressed. Now no more this 3 is dependent on 1 or 2, or 4 is dependent on 1 or 2. Now only 2 is dependent on 1, but 3, 4 and 5 are dependent on 3, and they can be carried out in the sequence. And the 6 is dependent upon only var and var are between 1 and 6 and 2 and 6, which are far away in the program order. So 1 and 6 has var, and 2 and 6 has var and var. So these are dependent on this part. So as we can see that we have addressed this var and var between 1, 6 and 2, 6, which are far away between the program. So until this program reaches up to the performance of the 6, until this program reaches this value has been updated. This instruction has performed its execution and the value of R1 has been updated. So this is far away from the value of R1 and R1 in step 1 and step 2. So till that point, when the instruction 6 is going to execute, this var and var between 1, 6 and 2, 6 has been addressed at that time, till that time. So register renaming has addressed the dependencies which were previously the dependencies as we saw in this case. This var and var, these were the dependencies. This 2, 3 dependency was eliminated in this case. Now 2 and 3 are not dependent on each other, as we have changed the name of this register set. It has been renamed to some other value, some other name. The 4 and 6 dependency reduced, 5 and 6 dependency reduced, faded away. 1 and 3 reduced, 3 and 6 reduced. As it is evident in this static scheduling based on renaming process. What has not been addressed? The 1-6 dependency and 2-6 dependency. So 1-6 dependency and 2-6 dependency has not been addressed. So 1 dependent upon 6. So this R1 has a dependence on R2, 1-6 dependency. This was a 1-6 dependency, as you can see, this was a for dependency, write after write. So which one of them writes before the one will create a data hazard. So this dependency can be can be addressed as this can be addressed while how this can be addressed while this process, this was the first instruction to be carried out or to be fetched, and this was the last instruction to be fetched. So until your program fetching or the fetching of the instruction is carrying out to this is reaching to this instruction number 6, this first instruction has been executed completely and the value of R1 has been stored where it has to be stored. So until we reaches this time, till we reach this time of instruction number 6, this 1-6 and 2-6 will fade away. This value will be updated and hence they can be operated in the same instruction cycle or the same. So we saw the two processes. One was operand forwarding and one was register renaming. Operand forwarding was being used to address which instruction, which hazard. Operand forwarding was used to address raw hazard, read after write. Whereas register renaming is being used to address war and war. As we can see in this example that we have addressed by renaming the register, we have addressed it with these two hazards. So, but it has increased the register pressure for the compiler. And it is being done by the compiler as this is a static scheduling. So then the static scheduling, as the name washes off the dependencies war and war just by changing the names. These are known as false dependencies. War raw dependency was not being washed away. We had to wait for the value to update. In the case of, and only solution was operand forwarding. We can reduce the execution or the fetching time by creating a copy of some operand and forwarding it to the ALU. That's what we have done. So this was the process of raw, and it was the process of operand forwarding. But in this case, in the case of register renaming, as we have changed the name of the register sets, and the dependencies were sorted out. So these are known as false dependencies. So they are false dependencies as they were just sorted out by renaming of the register. So the next, this was a part of static scheduling, and static scheduling is being done by the compiler. So there were two processes. One was the operand forwarding, other one was register renaming to solve these hazards or to address these hazards. The next one is the dynamic scheduling, which is also known as Tomasulo's algorithm or the process. So let us see how this is being done. Suppose this is an instruction fetch unit which fetches the instructions from the program, which instruction, every instruction, because there is a five stage process of the pipelining in the instruction set. I'm going to repeat it. The first stage in the fetching is the fetching of the instruction. Second stage is the decoding of the instruction. Then we have to data fetch about the instruction, then execute the instruction and store that. So we will follow this sequence in this dynamic scheduling method. One more example has to be done. One more thing has to be discussed in this case, that static scheduling was static because that was being done by the compiler. Compiler does not do that scheduling while the execution of the program. It just before executing that program, it processes all the instruction, then executes them simultaneously. But in this case, there is no role of the compiler while for the scheduling of the instruction. It is being actually done by the hardware. And how it is being done by the hardware, that's what we have to see uh, in this hardware. So this process is known as Masslow's process, and let us start with. So suppose for carrying out the pipeline, first we have to fetch the instruction. This is instruction fetch unit, and this is not necessarily fetching a single instruction. As the pipelining, it can fetch multiple instructions for the superscalar architecture to follow. So right now, consider for the sake of the example, it has fetching an instruction. Then we have a register set indicator, register status indicator. So register status indicator is the one. Register status indicator will display the status of the registers, whether the value that the instruction is expecting for is available to them or not. We will see how this is being done. And then this is the reservation center. So if suppose some value has to be updated, so there are multiple execution units, as we can see. There are multiple execution units of the instruction to execute it parallelly. So, and every instruction, as we have seen in the previous example, that every instruction cannot execute simultaneously. This add instruction, this store instruction has to wait for the value of the R1 being updated by the add instruction. So in this case, suppose the add instruction is being performed in this case in execution unit 1. It is updating the value of R1. That value of R1 is needed by this execution unit to store the value of to store that value. So R1, this execution unit 2 will be waiting for the value of R1 to update. And as this R1 value is placed on this bus, first of all, this R1 instruction will be carried out and placed on this common data bus. So when it is being placed on this common data bus, so it is going to the register set or the memory. But one copy is also being transferred to this part, this bus, this common bus. And this common bus, when one copy is being transferred to this part, so as we can see that R1, which was waiting, sorry, this store which was waiting for the R1, and suppose execution 1 was completed its value of R1 and placed that data on the common data bus to be transferred to the register set. But the copy of that value will also be placed on this bus also. So the next instruction R2, which was waiting for this to the execution unit, will be carried forward and will be forwarded to the next part on the common data bus. So as we can see that, so these are the multiple execution units. Suppose this is an example of a superscalar architecture, and this is a common data bus. So this can be said as operand forwarding mechanism by the hardware itself. So hardware is doing this process of operand forwarding. So one copy is being sent to the register file, while the other one is being placed on this bus system also, so that this reservation station. So what is this reservation station? This reservation station is the we can say just like a train reservation. Before boarding the train, we are waiting for someone to come. So we are waiting for someone to come in the reservation gallery. So reservation room till your friends do not arrive at a station, and you are waiting for, so you are waiting for them in the reservation room till your friends do not arrive. So when your friend arrives, when your friend arrives on this part, so when you both are together and your value is updated, this will go to the execution unit. You board the train and perform. So this is what being done actually in this case. In this case, and then the execution unit which was waiting can be operated, and this value can be updated on this common database. So as this process is being done or being performed uh, while the execution of the program. So this is known as dynamic scheduling uh, because it's being done in the while the execution of program is going on. So every instruction can be executed parallelly. So it is not necessary that every instruction will be so which are independent or do not have dependencies upon the previous instructions can be executed simultaneously. So those instructions which have the raw dependencies will have to wait for the previous instruction to carry out. Otherwise, those instructions which have war and war dependencies can be uh, executed simultaneously by performing the value of by performing register renaming and operand. Operand forwarding is done for raw only, whereas the register renaming or the static scheduling is done for war and war only. So in this process, this was being done by the compiler, whereas in this process, it is being done by the hardware. And we will see in the further in the next lecture that how this dynamic scheduling is actually being done in this Tomasulo's process. And that will be the last lecture actually of this module. It has taken longer than uh, expected. So we will complete this part of dynamic scheduling in the next lecture. So I think this is all for today. What we have discussed, discussed the two important parts of register renaming, how register renaming is done in the compiler part, and how the operand forwarding is useful to address the raw hazard. The raw hazard is being addressed by the operand mechanism, operand forwarding, whereas register renaming is addressing war and war. In the next lecture, we will see how dynamic scheduling is done to hardware and how operand forwarding and register renaming is done in case of dynamic scheduling by the hardware itself. So hardware is intelligent enough to perform dynamic scheduling in case of Tomasulo's algorithm. One more thing is to be stressed upon that I was telling. Yes, every instruction in this case can work out of order, except those which have data dependency. So every instruction in this case can work out of order. That the thing is to be noted. It's not being following the sequence, just being done by the compiler. So 6 can execute before 1. So or 5 can execute before 1. 3 can execute before 1. As we have seen that in this case, and we will see through an example how dynamic scheduling is done and how this is done by the hardware itself being intelligent hardware. So this is all for today. In the next session, we will discuss dynamic scheduling, and that will be the last lecture of this module. Thank you. It was late today due to some technical difficulties. Next time we will come back. Thank you. If you have any queries,